Hi, I'm Luiza Savage, Editorial Director of Washington Post Intelligence, and we're here at Davos at the World Economic Forum talking to leaders about whether we're entering a new industrial era as AI meets with big, heavy industry and complex systems like energy, infrastructure, manufacturing, and even the space age. And one thing that comes up again and again as we're talking about building out big things in the real world is managing the risks of climate change. And so to discuss this today is our guest, Dr. Joel Myers. He is the founder and chairman of AccuWeather. And AccuWeather has spent decades helping businesses navigate the complexity of weather and climate. So we're thrilled to have you here. Welcome.
I'm delighted to be here at Davos.
Well, talk to me a little bit about the big picture we're in now. Normally, when people think of innovation, they think about software and apps. But as the innovation moves more and more into these big established industries that involve actually building things in the real world, whether it's the electrical grid or new manufacturing facilities, how does the climate risk that you're seeing play into that?
Well, first of all, we build our business mainly on weather forecasting and having the most accurate forecasts available and providing these to business and industry as well as the public so they can make better decisions. If there's greater accuracy and the information or forecasts are communicated better, then we find companies are able to make much better decisions, and that translates into savings and reduced losses, increased profits. And we've saved business over $100 billion. And of course, over the last several years, more and more questions about climate, so we're answering those longer range forecasts as well. So most companies in the past have been interested in the short range, some of the intermediate, and up to 18 months. But over the last few years, clearly, they're planning further ahead, and we're selling more and more services to companies that want to look 5, 10, 20, 30 years ahead. One example would be Phoenix, where the high temperature hits 115 degrees on 20 days on average now. But 30, 35 years from now, there'll be over 100 days when the temperature is 115 or more in Phoenix. And that's going to impact a number of things. Air conditioning costs. Who wants to live, if you can tolerate 20 days that high, but 100, you may get reverse migration. I may hear from the Phoenix Bureau about it, but these are some of the things that are happening. And so we can provide these type of outlooks and projections for companies, and we are, so that they can do planning. If you're going to invest in a building, a facility that has a 30-year life, it may look good now, but in 15 years, it might be a different story. You have to consider that.
Right. So these are very long-term projects. They're massive investments. A lot of the times they're lining up, sometimes government, sometimes private industry, sometimes partnerships. So talk about maybe what we could go through a couple of different industries and the kinds of conversations that you're having and the kinds of risks that you're seeing. And I wanted to start first with the electric grid, because that is something that is on many people's minds, particularly as the AI data centers start to build out, putting pressures on the grid. How are you thinking about the reliability of the electrical grid going forward as some of these extreme weather events become more frequent?
Well, we're not experts in each industry. We serve each business and industry. We talk to them about what their problems are, their concerns, their worries, what weather factors or climate factors may be significant in their planning, and then we give them the best answer we can. And the key to that is having clean data. Some of the discussion around climate projections and so on are based on models that have run the traditional climate models. The problem is that climate models are not nearly as accurate as forecast models. We've seen tremendous progress in the accuracy of the forecast over my lifetime, and AccuWeather has led a lot of that. Certainly a lot of other people deserve credit, and a lot of the scientists and so on, universities with the research. But we've seen tremendous progress in weather forecasting, and the reason is these models are all based on physics and the latest in math and so on, and combined with supercomputers, and then with our meteorologists interpreting and communicating what that means in terms of action. So companies make the right decision, save lives. We've saved over 12,000 lives, just AccuWeather's forecast being more accurate. We've helped businesses save over $100 billion, mainly in forecasts. Now, climate models are not nearly as accurate because they don't have all of the capabilities, and we don't have the verifications. You want a forecast model for the next 30 days forecast, and you can verify it over and over and over again. You run this model a few times a day, so you keep improving them. Climate models, you make a 100-year forecast, you only have a few years of verification to begin with. So you can see that you're not going to have the same accuracy, and some of the projections have changed. We've done research that shows that some of the assumption in the traditional climate models are not going to be correct. So this information will help all businesses that have any long-range planning, but it's different for each business. And the key is understanding what their concerns and worries are and where they see the problems. They're the experts. And then giving them the best that we can. And it requires cleaned up data, because the historical record of data in order to make projections isn't always as clean as it ought to be. Weather stations change, there have been errors, there's missing data. So we've cleaned that all up. So you have to start with the best, cleanest, most precise data, obviously, in order to get the best result. And so that's where we started, and then we're able to make these findings and make projections based on those.
Mm-hmm. And I know you have data showing that we're going to be in for some more extreme rain events and rain considerations. Can you talk a little bit about what you've learned about what's going on with the rain cycle?
Absolutely. So what we did is we took our database, and after it's been thoroughly cleaned and so on, and then we took 44 representative weather stations in different regions, 44 regions across the country, in order to get an average for the U.S. And we looked back to 1950. And what we found is the frequency of heavy rainfall events is increasing. In fact, 4-inch rainfalls or more has increased 70% over the last 75 years.
70%.
70%, the frequency of 4-inch or more rains. 2-inch or more rains up 23%. But fascinatingly, the amount of rain has decreased. The average amount of rain has been declining by 0.9%, a little less than 1% every decade since 1995. Seems to be almost a pivot point or a singularity around 1995. And since then, the average rainfall has been declining. So think what that means. Heavier rains, more frequent, but the average rain is less, and you're getting less rain. So the rain that's coming is coming in heavier bursts. And that makes sense because the climate is warming. The atmosphere is warming. So as temperatures go up, the air can hold more water vapor. So there's more fuel available. And if you have an event that causes upward motion, which condenses the water vapor out into droplets and falls as rain, there's more potential to get heavier rains, and that's what we're seeing. But since 1995, along with that, we've seen a reduction in the relative humidity in the atmosphere. And that was a bit of a surprise, but thinking about it from a physics standpoint, it's understandable. So what we found is the temperature on average has been increasing about 0.5 degree Fahrenheit per decade. So over 60 years, it's up 3 degrees, which would be, you divide 6 decades into 3 degrees, about 0.5 degree warming per decade. And 3 degrees is about in line with that's a little over 1.5 Celsius. And so that's already happened for the United States as an average in terms of the warming that people have been concerned about. It's already happened and continues. So as the temperature goes up, the amount of water vapor in the air that it can hold goes up. Now, another point, evaporation is a cooling process. Very important point. When you get out of a shower and you have a draft or the humidity outside the shower is less than 100%, you get evaporation from your skin and you get a chill because it takes a lot of, back to physics, 540 calories per gram of water to evaporate. It uses a lot of heat to evaporate, so it causes cooling. So when the ground starts drying out, there's less cooling from the evaporation, and the ground heated from the sun is going to warm faster. So the concern is, as the ground is drying out, you're going to have accelerated warming because you have less water to evaporate.
So it's a self-reinforcing cycle.
Self-reinforcing that the climate models may not be fully accounting for. So if this trend continues of the drying, the rain that falls will be less effective. The ground will be drier, so it'll get hotter. It'll heat the atmosphere. The dew point can't catch up, so you'll have lower and lower humidity, which causes more evaporation. And it'll be a cycle that'll increase the desert areas of the United States, shrink the growing areas, increase the wildfire risk, all those things contributing to each other. And one of the best examples of that is the 1930s. 90 years ago. So we've had global warming since then. Remember, the Ice Age ended 12,000 years ago. We've been warming ever since. So there was natural warming even before humans started heating the atmosphere, increasing the greenhouse effect. But and there was a little ice age that ended in 1850. So there was natural warming occurring anyway. But certainly humans have been contributing significantly to the warming since 1950 by burning fossil fuels. And so this warming may now accelerate. Look what happened in the 1930s. 23 states and the District of Columbia, the all-time record high, if you look back to records for the last 150 years, occurred in the 1930s. Those records still stand from 90 years ago for the all-time record. Why? It was very dry. You had the Dust Bowl.
Do you think that this pattern that you're picking up in the data, are we at risk of another Dust Bowl?
We could. Now, it was poor farming practices that contributed to it. But as the soil dries, some of the dust gets picked up into the atmosphere, and that's another feedback mechanism. To get rain, you need droplets, you need particles that serve as nuclei for raindrops to form and cloud droplets to form. Without them, it's tougher for droplets to form. When you have too many droplets, particles in the atmosphere, they're all contributing, they're all competing for that water vapor. So you get tinier droplets. And if they're too small, they don't fall out. They stay in the cloud. You don't get, as they get bigger, they can fall out, fall faster, and that's how you get rain. If you've ever been in the tropics, you may notice sometimes you'll get a quick shower out of a cloud that's hardly thick at all. Over the desert, you need a cloud that's 50 times that thick to get rain to reach the ground. So as you get drying and you get more particles, you get more dust in the air, it contributes to drier conditions, which means it's going to get hotter. And the hotter it is, the more rapid the evaporation. So there could be major changes in the climate if this trend continues. Now, we've only seen it really over the last 30 years, this drying.
Right. Well, so the implications for agriculture are pretty obvious with drying air and higher temperatures. But talk about the implications for industry, for the availability of energy that we need increasingly in this country. What should business leaders be thinking about, given what you've just described?
Well, everybody's worried about the increasing cost of electricity. Obviously, we get electricity by burning mainly fossil fuels. Clearly, nuclear is part of it, windmills and solar, they're trying to catch up, and all the other alternative energy sources, but still, by far, the main source. So it means that you're going to need more air conditioning as the temperature goes up, and if it accelerates an increase, more and more air conditioning will be needed. And that's more energy, more electricity, which is generated by more burning of fossil fuels. And so it all, unfortunately, is accelerating and compounding in the same direction.
Mm-hmm. And when we think about the big conversation that's happening right now is around siting data centers to power AI. Some of these big data centers, they don't just need electricity, they also need water. You're talking about ongoing decreases in the amount of available water. Should the location of these data centers be given more thought? That we know there are parts of this country that are suffering from water scarcity. Should we be more thoughtful about where we're putting either data centers or other big new long-term projects?
You're exactly right. And that's what we do for companies too. This is what I'm talking about here is an average for the United States as a whole. But what we found is for individual regions, individual places, in some areas the warming is much less. In some it's much greater. In some places the drying is greater. In some places there is no decline in relative humidity. The moisture in the atmosphere has kept up with the increase in temperature, the increase in moisture. So that's where companies can come to us and get a tailored study for an individual place. But there are big variations just across the United States. And we're going to extend this study to the whole world. But just in the United States, we're seeing from region to region very significant differences from this average of the country as a whole.
Mm-hmm. And what about investors? Do you think they're learning to price in enough climate and weather risk, or is this still something where you have to explain to people how to think about it?
Still have to explain to most people. It's not number one or number two, number three on people's radar as they plan. There are so many other things that seem important. Just in our forecasting service, so few people know about the value we can bring companies. For example, let's talk about hospitals where we have lots of clients. We serve thousands of businesses, but in the case tornadoes, so the National Weather Service does a decent job as a government agency. It's one of the best, but it provides an average of about 8 minutes advance notice on tornadoes. We provide 16 minutes on average. That extra time saves lives. And we pinpoint it to particular locations so we can be more accurate, more precise. But importantly, we also have a 77% lower false alarm rate. So a hospital gets a warning of a flood or severe or this and that, and they have to evacuate patients and plan all that. It may be hundreds of thousands of dollars. If we can tell them, no, it doesn't apply to your location, just ignore it, that's a big savings. On the other hand, if people get risk from lightning or a tornado, we can reduce that reputational risk and importantly save lives and injury for patients, for employees, and so on.
One of the big topics of conversation here at Davos is obviously AI. And I'm curious, what role is AI playing for you and what opportunities do you see it opening up?
Well, we used AI before anybody called it AI back in the 80s. So we bring in all different weather forecast models from around the world. Obviously, all the U.S. models, but the European model and the Canadian model, the Japanese model, and 192 models. And we bring in more weather data into our facility. We're headquartered in State College, Pennsylvania, than any other place on the planet. And it's how this data is then handled and provided to our meteorologists and our experts, 100 weather forecast experts who then add additional value. So integrating, the key is using all of AI in the forecast operation area, but also the role of the human is very important. And I've had that discussion on many panels here at Davos because a lot of talk about, well, AI will solve everything. And the curiosity, the judgment, and the intelligence and experience of humans is key in weather forecasting, not only improving the accuracy, like I just described on tornadoes, because that's recognition by the meteorologists of certain radar patterns and so on, but knowing the background conditions to provide that more accurate forecast, but also in communicating the forecast. And this is so important so people and companies make the right decision. I can give you so many examples of this. But first, maybe I'll give you the example first and then explain what I mean in the background and how I see AI playing a role. So there was a situation in Eastern Virginia 3 or 4 years ago where people were trapped in their cars for 24 hours. You may remember that snowstorm and so on. Now, we predicted that snowstorm first before anybody else. We take great pride in that. And our forecast of the amount was slightly more accurate than everybody else, I think by an inch or two. But everybody predicted snow. Everybody predicted a snowstorm. But AccuWeather headlined it, "Chaos on the Highways." we told our clients do not send any trucks or people into that area. We told them like 36 hours ahead because there'll be chaos on the highways. Now, we knew that would happen because an AI wouldn't have predicted that because the day before was 80 degrees. It was very warm. And then it turned very cold and snowed. But the ground was still so warm, the snow fell, it melted, refroze, so under the snow was a sheet of ice. So trucks jackknifed, people crashed all over the place. The highways became impassable along a 100-mile stretch, and people were trapped in their cars for 24 hours or more. We predicted the impact of the snow, and that's what we do. So people make the right decision. Many people don't, they cried wolf, there was a hybrid, got out of the way of a hurricane in the past, or it didn't affect me. Just like what happened in Florida several years ago when we warned of the hurricane was going to cause a storm surge of 16 to 20 feet. Now, the National Hurricane Center said 12 to 16, but we said 16 to 20, evacuate 24 hours before anybody else said, and the highest was 18 feet. 100 and some people died there. We saved lives because we heard from people that got out based on what we said. So it's communicating the information better, and that's what our 100 meteorologists do. They're expert forecasters. Some of them have worked for me for 20, 30, 40 years, and they're experts in communicating the weather so the right decisions are made.
So if I'm a business leader and I'm making a new build, or I'm making a major investment to upgrade an existing facility somewhere, and I said, I better call Joel Myers before I commit, before I dig. What kinds of things should I be asking you about and thinking about when it comes to these long-term big industry projects?
Well, first you need to tell our experts what you're going to do. Where's it going to be? What the concerns would be, what would impact your business, and then we have a checklist, obviously, to go through and talk about, and then provide, maybe it's the frequency, if the temperature goes to 10 degrees or lower, is going to be a problem. So right now, it goes to 10 degrees on average once every 5 years. What's it going to be like in 20 years? Whatever the issue is, whatever the problem is, then we'll give them an answer. And the cost for the service is so modest compared to the possible losses or changes. I mean, it's like 1/1000th of 1% of. It's typically businesses tell us the payback's 100 to 1 or more on what the cost of our service is, and so we take great pride in that. And they often say, "Why didn't we think of this before?"
So the bottom line is, whatever the conditions are today, we should absolutely not assume that over the course of a long-term investment, they will stay the same.
Absolutely. And they're going to be, and the very big differences from place to place. In some places, the climate's not going to change as much. Other places, there'll be dramatic changes, and that's the important thing. So our report, our study, was a combined for the country, an average, smoothed average for the country. But it's amazing the differences from place to place. Some places already dry are going to get much drier, other places won't. And so it all makes sense when you look at the physics.
Joel Myers, thank you so much. This has been really helpful in helping us understand one important element of risk as people are starting to think about rebuilding, upscaling, and transforming industry with AI. Some of these long-term investments will really need to think about these issues that you raise of long-term resilience.
And you made a very important point. Spending a little bit of money on planning in the beginning will pay tremendous dividends in the end. And the payback could be hundreds of thousands, million to one, just by a little different decision at the start of these projects. And so we're thankful to be able to help in that regard. And we've seen already some companies that have been appreciative of what we've been able to do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.